Hello guys and gals, and welcome to a new tutorial. In today's video we're going to be covering this cute little water shader here that has a neat effect in it will look a different color depending on the depth of the objects below. So you might be able to see here on this sphere, especially because it's white, you can see that we're getting some different colored bandings based on how deep this sphere currently is. And we can just take that a step further, and if we were to raise our water up, you can see that it gets darker and darker until we're right at the top. Yay! So this is what we're going to be covering in this video. Now this is just a single shader, but it's quite a long one, and we're going to be mucking with some transparency, so there are going to be some wait times on your shaders compiling, so expect a few cuts here and there. When I do that, just pause and wait for yours to catch up, because as I say, it might take a little bit of time for your shaders to compile. Now before we begin, I am going to be providing you with two textures for this tutorial. They are U assets, so you don't need to import them. Just drag and drop them into your content folder. Obviously download them first, and then head to the folder that you want to place them in, and then just paste. It would help if I had copied them first, wouldn't it, Dean? Come on, copy. And then we'll paste them in, and you can see here they'll just pop up inside of this folder, and these are the lovely textures that we're going to be using. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a new material, and we'll call this m_toony water. Yay! And we'll open this up. Opened on my other screen. Here we are. We'll open him up. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we set this up so that we're getting the correct render settings. So we know it needs to be see-through, so change our blend mode to translucent. We're going to leave it default lit. We do not want two-sided in this case, but we are going to head down to our lighting mode because we're going to want roughness and our normal map. Now by default these are turned off with a translucent, so we have to change our lighting mode, and we're going to select surface translucency volume, which as you can see here is used for surfaces like glass and water. So we'll choose that, and there we go. Our material is now set up and ready to go. We don't have to change anything else of our material settings. Now we just have to set this thing up. So the first thing that we're going to set up with our material is the coloring. So we're going to have our colors be brighter towards the top of our surface. If we just minimize this down, you can see towards the top we have a brighter color, and towards the bottom we're getting murkier and darker, and that's what we're going to set up now. So to do this, and to make sure that things are looking natural beneath the water as well, we're first going to get us a scene color texture. And what this is going to do is it's going to return the color of our scene. Huzzah! And to make sure that we're getting our color on top, we're going to use a little node that emulates Photoshop, and it's going to be a blend overlay. So we're going to take our base and we're going to add a color on top of it. The color that we're going to add on top of it is our watercolor. To get our color as a parameter so that we can use this in an instance, we're going to hold V and left click. Whoopsie daisy, V. And then we are just going to call this water color, like so. And we're just going to drag our pin into the blend. And then what we'll do is we'll just set our color to something like a light blue. Not going to be too precious about it. We're just going to choose a light blue, like so. And we can tweak these colors later. Because this is a parameter, we'll be able to change this in an instance, and it will do that in an instant. Yay! See what I did there? Right. Next thing that we're going to do, because if we just plug this in, it's just going to return our base colors. And we don't really want that to just give us our base color with a blue on top. We want this to have a nice fade to it. Now, because we're using a transparent material, we have access to depth fade. And what we're going to do with depth fade is we're going to use this as a mask to determine where our colors change. So what we're going to need is a little scalar parameter here. So we'll hold S and left click for a scalar parameter, and we will call this our depth mask. Ooh, we're getting a little bit of a slowdown there, Unreal. Come on, depth mask. There we are. And we're just going to default this to 1. We can change this in our instance later, and we'll plug this into the opacity. We'll hold S and left click again, and we will call this our depth fade, like so. And we will plug this into our fade distance, and we are going to default this out at 225. So now that we have this, how are we going to determine what colors to use? Well, quite simply, we are going to hold L and left click for a lerp. And what a lerp allows us to do is take two values and then blend between them based on an alpha or a mask. We know this is going to be our mask, so we can plug this into the alpha. And we know that we want our base color, which is just going to be our scene color, lerped with our blend overlay, like so. So now, based on this mask, right at the very top of the water, we're just going to get our regular color, and then as it travels further down, it's going to become more blue, so we're going to get a nice fade. Now, we could stick this straight into our base color and test that out, but we're not going to. We're going to add another color to this for the very, very bottom of our water, where it's going to get to its murkiest and darkest. To do this, what we're going to do, because we already have our fade from one color to another color, we don't need to get our scene color again. We're going to make a new lerp, hold L and left click. And we know we want to start with the result of our first lerp, so we can plug this straight into our B. And then we need a new color, so hold V and left click for a new color. And we'll call this murk color, like so. And we'll plug this into the B value, because that's what we need to be changing to. And we will now pick a darker blue. Let's see. Don't want to go too far in. We want it to be quite murky, and we're just going to value down a little. We'll fine tune that a little bit later. There we go. We'll just take a darker blue for now. Now for the alpha, once again, we want to fade. So we're going to use a secondary depth fade. This time, however, we're going to create a much larger fade. And we're going to use a slightly differed mask. So S and left click, and this time we'll call this our murk depth mask. And we'll plug this into our opacity. We know already that we want this to be a different value, so we're just going to stick this to 0.95, so it's a little bit less apparent than our first. And then hold S and left click for another, and murk depth fade. And this one we know we want to go a lot deeper. So because we need it to go further distance, we'll set it to a higher number, say 900, and plug this into the fade distance. Next, we'll plug this directly into our alpha for the secondary lerp, and we can now plug this into our base color, and we have the base color of our water ready to go. Now, we're going to have a lot of parameters to mess with once we've got this material sorted. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of our current parameters, and under our material expression group, we're going to just call these water color. And now in any instance we make, these are going to be underneath the watercolor subheading, which is going to make things much tidier for us inside of our instances. And you can see here it's taken a while to give us a little update. We can press apply to get that going, and it's going to take a little while to get that sorted. Okay, so now that's finished loading. We haven't updated our little preview yet. Oh, it's frozen. It's trying to do it for me. There we go. You can see we're getting our different colors here, and you can see right at the top it's a little bit lighter than it is down at the bottom. See that? We're already getting this nice little transition, which is pretty cool, but right now it's just a blue blob. Still quite cartoony. That's kind of cool, actually. We like that, don't we? We do. The next thing that we'll do our roughness. So we're just going to hold S and left click for a scalar parameter. There we are. And we'll call this our roughness. There we are. And plug this in. Now with roughness, 0 is rough, and no, it isn't. 0 is smooth, and 1 is rough. So if you want it to be smoother and therefore shinier, you want a lower number. We want it to be shiny because it's water, so we're going to set that to 0. And we'll just have it plugged in. You can mess with this value later on in the instance if you want to, but obviously the lower the better for water. The next thing that we'll do is we'll just make sure that we have an opacity parameter. So S left click, opacity, and we'll default this out at 0.5 so that we can see things working in a little while. Okay, so we have our two really easy parameters set up. That's our roughness and our opacity. They're done. Yay, give yourselves a clap. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up our normal maps. Now, you'll have noticed that we have a texture called water norm. It's the one that I tend to use quite a lot, especially in these tutorials. Yay! We're going to drag this into this little material window here. So we have a texture sample of this. And we're going to actually need two of these. So highlight it, Control C, Control V, copy, paste. And now we have two of them. The next thing that we're going to do, because we want these to move like waves, is we're going to move around the texture on the UVs. So you can see we have these UV pins. We're going to move our texture by influencing the UVs. To do this, we're going to have to reference our UV coordinates. So we'll get a texture coordinate here. And to make sure that we can change the scale of this, because we don't know how big our plane is going to be or how small it's going to be, and obviously we want to be able to change our instance to have the same scaled water no matter what, we're going to say text coordinate and then hold M and left click for a multiply, and we're going to multiply this by a scalar parameter, and this we're going to call our normal scale 1. So we'll default this to just a value of 1 so that we don't break our texture. And now we'll just copy and paste these, plug our texture coordinate into the second multiply, and change to the second one to normal scale 2 rather. There we are. And the next thing that we're going to do is hold P and left click for a panner. There we are. We'll do that twice. Now we'll plug the multiply into the coordinates of the panner, and what a panner does is it allows us to scroll our textures around on our material and make them animated. So we could just hard set in a timer. If we were to take the same times that I've got in my preview, we would have -0.1 and -0.1 and 0.3 positive. And in the second one, we have a 0.2 and a 0.1, like so. And then we can plug these into the UVs of our texture samples, and now they will move around. Yay! However, if we wanted to change these in our instances, we are going to need some lovely parameters for our speeds, because we want to be able to control our speeds. So we're just going to make a little bit of room here. And what we will do here with our first one is we are going to hold S and left click for a scalar parameter, and this is going to be our normal 1 x, like so. And then we will copy and paste this and call this normal 1 y, like so. And just to make sure that we get the same speed that we currently have in here, we have -0.1 and 0.3. So -0.1 and then 0.3. Now you'll notice problem, we have two pins but only one area that they can go to, and they can't possibly both occupy the same space at once. So what we need to do is we need to use an append, and what an append will do is it will take two values and then put them into a value of the combined amount of those. So it's not adding them together, it's putting them into a list. So our new list is going to be -0.1 and then -3. And if we plug this vector 2 into our speed, you can see it will take our two values, -0.1 and -3, and it will put them in order of x and y, which is why we've named them x and y. Highlight this, copy, paste, plug this into the speed of our second panner, but we are going to change our parameter names to normal 2x and normal 2y. And then we'll just make sure that they're defaulted, so 0.2, 0.1, 0.2, and 0.1. Okay, we're not quite done with the normals though, because we want to make sure that we are using both of these. So we're going to hold A and left click for an add node, and we will plug the RGB values of both into the add. Now then, by adding these together, we're going to be pushing the normals into values that they normally wouldn't be at, and one of the values that needs to stay the same in a normal so that it doesn't look broke as heck is the B. So what we're going to do is we're going to comp mask just the R and the G. We're not going to take the B values. We want the red and the green values because we want those to be higher, so those are more defined, but we need the B, which is just the base of the normal, to just stay the same. What we'll then do is we will multiply, so hold M and left click for multiply. We will multiply this by a new scalar, S left click, and this is going to be our normal strength. What this is going to allow us to do is control how powerful our normal is. We'll give this a default value of 1, so it's just defaulted. And then what we need to do, because obviously we need RGB and we only have RG here, is we need to do something we've already done, which is our append. We need to add something else to the list. So we will append vector. And as I mentioned, we don't want our blue value to go above the default. So hold 1 and left click for a constant, plug this into B and set this value to 1. Like so. Now we have our normal map back to normal. Haha, dad jokes. What we can do with that is we can stick this directly into the normal pin, and now we'll have some lovely normal maps on our material. So we can go ahead and press apply, and then we can wait for that to compile. Okay, so now we've got that compiled. You can see we're getting this nice wobbly bubbly effect. Yay! Isn't that looking cool? So what we can do now is we're just going to hit the save button to save that so we don't lose anything. We're going to minimize this down. And now what we will do is we will take a plane. So let's get rid of this guy. We will take a plane and we will just scale him up. Big, there you are. We don't need to be quite that large. We're just going to scale this down just ever so. I want to sort of try and match the same scale that I had at the start. Make sure that we're just, there we go. Right. So we'll place this into our level somewhere. I'm just going to place it a little bit higher up so that we can see the depth working on multiple levels. Now we're not going to apply the material directly. Remember, we're making this for instances. So what we will do is we'll right click our material, create material instance. And what an instance allows us to do is it takes the parameters that we've set up and we can change those in real time for instant results. We don't have to keep compiling. So what we'll do is we'll apply this to our plane. And you can see here we're getting some nice results already. We're sort of getting the colors that we need. You can see we're getting a little bit darker in some areas, a little bit lighter in some areas. And you can see that we've got our waves. Now, it doesn't look anything like the one that we had at the start because we still have quite a lot to add to this. And we're going to just quickly match up some of our instance values. So if we were to drag out our instance here, we've opened the instance up. Let's just dock this inside the same area. Take this guy and dock him into this guy so we can keep them together. There we are. So what we're going to do is anything that we want to use, we can turn on by ticking the little value. And you can see here we've got all of these things in the nice little groups. We haven't done the normal grouping, so we'll do that next time we go into the material. We don't want to compile for that right now. And what we're going to make sure that we do is match up some of these values. So let's see, our murky color. Let me just grab the murky color that we had in the preview. And here is that value. So red is 0.002428, green of 0.39059, and blue of 0.274677. Oh, and that is our murky color. And then for our regular blue color, it's going to be this guy, nearly the same, 0.01096 and 0.610496, and blue set to 1. Now we've got those nice colors exactly the same. Now our murky mask, we're just going to lower that value down to 0.9, so it's a little bit less murky. Our depth mask is fine, our murk depth fade is also fine. So this is exactly what we want. The rest is going to be down to the other things that we add in. So one of the things that we currently don't really need up is our opacity. Now, we only have this as translucent, so we had access to the depth fades. Our opacity, the higher we take this, the darker our colors will become. So if you say set that to 1, you're going to get this nice blue. Very, very deep blue. If we minimize that down, you can see now we're getting this really nice blue color, which is pretty cool. So what we're going to do next is we are going to change our normal strength and our normal scale. So you can see right now they're really, really wavy. We don't really want them to be quite so wavy. We're actually going to take our normal strength down to 0.1. to really lower those down a little bit. But now we can barely see them because they're not really occurring very often. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our normal scale 1 and our normal scale 2. Now the reason we have 2 scales and 2 sets of movements is because we want 2 sets of different waves overlapping each other so that we get a little bit more motion. So it breaks it down and it's less obvious that it's repeating. So our scales, we're going to put 1 to 5 and 2 is going to be 3. That's confusing to say. 2 is going to be 3 and 1's going to be 5. There we are. And we're just going to leave our speeds to what they currently are, and that's going to match what we had at the very beginning as far as our little waves go. So what we can do is we can save the instance. Now, we need a couple more things to get this looking the same as we had at the beginning. We are missing the little shines on top, which we're going to be using our caustics for, and we're also missing just a little bit of refraction that we had in there for extra detail. So we're going to open our water material back up, and we're going to first do the little shiny things or the caustics. Now, for the most part, it's going to be matching all of this guy. So what we can do is we can just select most of this, and we will take all of that, copy and paste it. But we're going to change the word normal in all these instances to caustic. So caustic scale 2. Caustic scale 1, normal, becoming caustic 1x, caustic 1y, and the same here, caustic 2x, and here we have our caustic 2y. Now the only thing that we need to change is our actual textures because they're still using the water norm. You can see here, we're just going to minimize this down ever so slightly, but we can still see our textures. And with one of these selected, you can see we have our texture here. We can just drag and drop our caustic texture into those boxes to change them. So before we continue on, we are just going to quickly change all of these guys. Select all of the normal parameters, and we will set their group to normals, like so. Now we'll select all of our caustics so far and change these to caustics or shine. Shine is probably more appropriate than caustics. Caustics tend to be under the water, but there we go. Now, similarly to what we did previously, we're going to add these together. So hold A and left click and plug in our values here. Nice. Now, because these are black and white textures, we only want one value to use as a mask. So we're just going to comp mask out. And it doesn't really matter which one you use because, as I say, this is black and white. But we're going to take red because it's just the first one in the array. And now what we're going to do is we're going to compare these little values. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to use an if node. Now, normally I would say don't use an if node because they can be quite expensive, but in this case, we don't really have a way around it because we're getting multiple values and we want to switch them on and off based on another value. So an if node is the only way we're going to be able to do that right now. So we're going to get an if, and we will plug our R value into the A, so the A of the if, and then in the B, we want to hold S and left click, and we're going to say, shine limit. We'll call this shine limit. And we will set this to a default of 1. We'll plug this into B. Next, what we will do is we will plug some values into the A greater than B and A less than B. So hold 1 and left click twice to get 2 constants. Change one of them to 1 and leave the other one at 0. And the 1 we're going to plug into the A greater than B, and the other is the B greater than A. So what this is going to do is it's going to say if the value from our texture samples is greater than the value of shine limit, at this case 1, we're going to turn it on. If it's not, we'll turn it off. So we will now take this value, hold M and left click for a multiply, and we'll multiply this by a new value, which is going to be our strength. We'll say flash strength. We'll give this a default value of 1 just so that we can see it. and we can plug this into our emissive color because we want this to emulate light bouncing off the surface. We'll plug it into our emissive color so that it has a brightness. Okay, so we have our little flashy causticy things all plugged in and ready to go. We can press apply and again wait for our lovely compile. Okay, now we have our compiling done. You can see here we're getting some flashes on our surface. Pretty cool. And now these flashes are going to occur anywhere where the white lines on either one of these textures overlaps and the values that they are greater than 1, because obviously white is 1, but if we're adding 1 and 1 together, we're going to get 2. If it's 2, then obviously we're going to turn it on. If it's not, then we'll turn it off. So that's the way that these flashes are working. And if we go over here, you can see that they're flashing quite rapidly in here, and you can see we're getting some that are just flying along that aren't flashing. Now the ones that you can see that are flying along that aren't flashing, these are values of 1. So what we need to do is we need to increase that flash value, our shine limit. If we increase this to 1.03, then anything of 1 isn't going to show. It's only going to show anything that is greater than 1. Now we're getting some nasty little artifacts here, and the reason we're getting some nasty artifacts is because we have to set up our values. So turn on all of these little things here, and here in our caustics we will turn these guys on. We need to add some of this to our caustics. As you can see, our shine limit and our flash strength should be up with our caustics, but it isn't. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our caustic scale to 3 on both values, because we just want these to flash every now and then. And then we can change around some of their motion, because I feel like they're perhaps moving just a little bit quick. So caustic 1x, we're going to put to 0.03. Caustic 1y, we're going to put to 0.001. Caustic 2x, we're going to set to -0.05. And the caustic 2y, we're going to put -0.002. So they're going to be moving very, very slowly across our surface, but you can see them ever so slightly, just flashing on and off from time to time, because they're overlapping a lot less than they were previously. But right now they just look like little white splodges, and that's because we're just setting the value to its current value, which at any given point is not going to exceed 2. So what we need to do is change our flash strength, and the flash strength is going to change the emissive value and make them glow or flash. So we're going to set this to a lovely value of 200, which is nice and bright. Now you can see one already here on my little preview. You can see them flashing all over the surface. Yay! How cool is that? So now we can look at them in a little level, and you can see they're flashing on our surface. We have the flashes, we have the color, we have the normal, we have the depth. We just need a little bit of refraction, and the refraction is just going to bend the light a little bit just to make things a little bit cool and wavy. So obviously we have refraction available to us. Here it is. Look at that guy, refraction. So to use refraction, we have to blend between 2 values, much like we have with our lerps up here. So hold L and left click for a lerp. And now we're going to control this using our camera angle. And the best way to do this, or rather our viewing angle, not our camera angle, is going to be a Fresnel node. Fresnel, and we will plug this into the alpha. Now what a Fresnel will do for us, if we can quickly get this to preview, is it will add a little glow to the outside of the circle here, you can see. And that will change based on whichever mesh we put in there, because you can see when our viewing angle changes, it changes the value of the pieces that we can see. So we're going to use that as the alpha. And in the A value, we're going to set just a value of 1. So we can hold 1 and left click for a constant, set that to 1, plug that into the A. And for our B, we're going to set this to a scalar parameter, hold S, left click, we'll call this refraction amount. And we're going to default this out at 1.33, which is going to be really, really too high, you'll see shortly. 1.33, plug that into the B, and we'll plug this into the refraction. Now then, when we press apply to compile this, we're not going to be able to see it in our world. So go ahead and press apply, and I'll show you. Okay, there we are. So you can see just on the preview, we're getting no refraction at all. And if we were to minimize this down, once this has caught up, we're going a little bit too quick for Unreal today, haha. Once this has caught up, we'll see that there is absolutely no refraction to be seen. Okay, there you go. No refraction. I never tell you a lie. And the reason that we can't see any refraction is because although we can see through this because we're using our depth fade, it's technically 100% opaque due to our opacity. Now, if we were to take our opacity value and just lower this down to something, say 0.5, back to its default, bloop, you'll see now we have some really ugly refraction going on. So we're going to use the opacity to help us control our refraction. In our case, we want to actually push it the other way. So it's taking the refracted lines downwards. We want them to be just above what we can see. So we're going to take our refraction amount down and just put it ever so slightly above. Ever so slightly, just a teeny tiny little bit. Let's see what we had on our... We had 0.95. So we'll set it to 0.95. Now then, we're getting like a little bit of a wave to it. As you can see, it's waving the refraction ever so little, but it's kind of boring amount of refraction. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our waves to help influence that. So back to our main material, and to get our waves to influence it, what we need to do is we need to plug our normal into our Fresnel. Now, we can't just take this appended normal because we're using normal strength, at which point we're only going to get 10% of the effect. We want to use all of our normal. So what we will do is take from our RNG values, and we will then append them again into a 1 before they're multiplied, like so. So we append them, and we will then plug that into the normal. And now what that's going to do is it's going to allow our normals to influence the Fresnel. So it's going to change what we can see based on the normal instead, as well as our viewing angle, instead of just the viewing angle. So as the normals move around, it's going to change how the Fresnel looks, and it's going to wobble our refraction with the waves. Again, it's going to take a little bit to compile, so apply. Okay, and you can see here already, you can see that we're getting some nice wobbles just in the preview refraction that is matching our waves there. It's pretty nice. It's not quite caught up with us back over in our level. As you can see, we're still just getting this grey. But once it catches up, you can see we're getting this nice waviness to our refraction here. Pretty cool. Quite nice. There we are. And just raise this up. Although, let's see. A bit of a bug with the colouring. Something tells me that one of our values might not be correct because we're not quite getting... Oh, of course we're not. We haven't put the opacity back. Oh, Dean, you silly. There we go. The opacity back to 1. And now you can see we're getting this nice little bit of... Oh, no, not 1. We don't want 1. Aha, because that gets rid of the refraction again. So we want the opacity to be ever so slightly down. So maybe 0.99. We can't see it. 0.98. 0.97. See, we can see it now. 0.97, we can see it. 0.95 is really nice, but what we got on our preview, the preview was 0.9, so we can go down as far as 0.9. There we go, to get that nice little wavy refraction above our objects that are in the water, as long as we can see them at the right angles. Cool. And now if we were to raise this up, you can see that it will get darker, and it will get darker. Yay! Up into a limit of our 900 units, but it will get darker and darker as we take it higher. And the lower we get, the lighter it will get, until it's just really shallow water. So we can have automatic depth. Obviously, you can set your colors to whatever you want, play with the parameters. You can set all of your different, like your flash sizes, how often they're going to occur, how bright they are. You can really blow some of this stuff up. But there you go, everybody. Some really cool tuning water with automatic color depending on the depth of your lake or ocean. Hooray! Pretty nifty. As always, thank you very much for watching, and if you'd rather just download all of it pre-made if you're having trouble, then you can go ahead and check out my Patreon, where I will be uploading the files directly for download as always. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.